Here we go. It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. Should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. I do apologize for that overlap and feedback that cut through our live opening, but stuff happens. This is Wednesday, I think. Today's Wednesday, right? Wednesday, November 4th, 2015. Thank you for joining us. You could have been anywhere in the world today, and I do appreciate the time that you spend with me. Those of you who are listening live, I thank you. And those of you who listen after the fact, I definitely thank you for downloading and just being a part of the Benjamin Dixon Show family. There's a lot on my plate tonight. Let me just start. So election results have come in from last night. I didn't go over them last night. We talked about it briefly with regard to the election in Kentucky. But last night looks like it was a sweep in major elections for conservatives. Conservatives maintain control over the state house in Virginia, which is significant, and I'll explain why in a minute. Conservatives, a Tea Party conservative won the governorship of Kentucky. We discussed that a little bit last night, but I want to unpack that a little bit more. Houston rejected Proposition 1, which was a non-discrimination act for the LGBT community, so they rejected that. I'll talk about that as to why they rejected the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, or otherwise known as HERO, that was rejected. We'll discuss all of those things. Overall, it was a big night. It was an off-year election, and this is the advantage that Republicans have. They have always had, and it looks like there's no change in the near future. Republicans have always had an advantage in off-year elections. Turnout during off-year elections, without a doubt, they have always had an advantage there, and that is how they win. I believe I read somewhere that 39 of 50 gubernatorial races are off-year elections. So they have a built-in advantage because liberals, progressives, Democrats apparently don't know how to go out on the off year. They only know how to go out and vote during the presidential election, the general election every 4 years. And because of that, Republicans have been able to grab and maintain hold of power on the state level. Well, there's a lot of action that takes place on the state level. There are a lot of initiatives, a lot of ballot initiatives, a lot of issues that take place specifically on. Matter of fact, more happens on the state level than is designed to happen on the federal level. So long as progressives are not actively participating in the off years, Republicans will always be able to, for instance, in Virginia, the Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe wants to enact progressive legislation on gun control. Well, now he's stuck with a Republican majority state House and state Senate. So his initiatives, his progressive initiatives, are not going to be able to be passed. More than likely, it would take barring some miracle, some political miracle, he would not be able to get his initiative passed. It gets even worse. We discussed this last night in Kentucky. The new governor, or governor-elect, Matt Bevin, Tea Party darling, won underneath the premise of rolling back Connect, which is the the state exchange system for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. He ran on the idea, on the promise that he would repeal and replace. We've heard this refrain from conservatives so many times that they're going to repeal and replace most of them have absolutely nothing to replace it with. They just want that promise of repeal and replace. And that's usually enough to get conservatives in an uproar, because according to conservatives, the worst thing in the world that ever happened to them was Obamacare, because Obamacare is tyranny and oppression. Obamacare is dictatorial. Obamacare is totalitarianism. Obamacare is putting government hands on their Medicare. You'll get the oxymoron there if you didn't already get it. So he ran successfully a campaign to roll back Connect, the Kentucky system, and all of a sudden he wins. The ramifications of that, we discussed this last night, almost 400,000 people who are now insured in Kentucky as a result of the Medicaid expansion. Medicaid benefits generally the impoverished. 400,000 people who now have health care because of the Medicaid expansion, that is now in jeopardy, along with 100,000 people who signed up via Connect and the state exchanges. So now here you have Kentucky with a county by the name of Owsley, Kentucky, which I've discussed ad nauseum on the show, but I think it's appropriate for me to bring it up yet again. One of the poorest counties in the nation. In this county, Owsley, Kentucky, they consume the greatest percentage of SNAP benefits of any other county in the nation. This county is 95% white and 99% conservative. The fact that they are on SNAP benefits means that they are impoverished, which means that these 95% conservatives, Republicans who voted for Bevin on last night, have voted against their own best interest, and now they are going to suffer the consequences because they hate Obamacare, because they hate Obama. That is some mighty powerful hate, that you are willing to shoot yourself in the foot because you hate somebody so much. But that's exactly what they've done in Kentucky. Now, don't forget, Kentucky even gets even stupider. Let me just say that they get even stupider with Kim Davis out of Rowan County, Kentucky, the county clerk who refused to sign marriage certificates, and the entire Christian persecution complex that she had, wanting to be able to maintain the position of authority, but not carry out the duties that she has been entrusted with by the people who elected her into office, because she did not want to sign a secular license to grant rights to same-sex couples. There's a lot of stupid stuff happening in Kentucky, and I think the creme de la creme, the epitome of the stupidity that happens in Kentucky was last night. Conservative Republicans electing someone who is going to take the very thing that's keeping some of them alive away for about 500,000 people. He has not said what he's going to replace it with. All there is the promise to repeal and replace. No one's really saying what he's going to replace it with. He could replace it with nothing. He could replace it with something that's half as efficient, that costs more. It could be a disaster, so long as they replace Obamacare and stick it to President Obama. That's all that matters. That's how dedicated they are to this, to their hatred of President Obama. And that's how dedicated they are to their ignorance, to their desire to oppose anything progressive when they are the beneficiaries of all things progressive. They need the safety net. They need the welfare. They need the SNAP benefits. They need Obamacare. They need the Medicaid expansion. But apparently they need their bigotry and their hatred more. So maybe we shouldn't feel sorry for them. I don't know. But I know that there's going to be a lot of good people who are caught up in this, and they will wake up and realize they don't have their benefits anymore, all because they actively elected, or they tacitly elected by not showing up to the polls. I believe his first name is Matt Bevin, whatever his name is. We'll hear a lot more about him defeating General Jack Conway, a Democrat. So Virginia, the Republicans maintain control over the Virginia state legislature. Houston rejected Proposition 1, which was an anti-discrimination proposition. It was attempting to simply say that there should be no discrimination in public places. The terrible thing about this is not only the defeat rather, but the manner in which they lost. They ran a campaign suggesting well, first let me unpack the proposition. The proposition was to fight back against discrimination, to make it illegal to discriminate in public places against LGBT Americans, Houstonians. The T in the LGBT was the fear mongering angle. That's where they brought in the fear campaign, the transgender community. They ran a campaign suggesting that that perverts and pedophiles and sexual deviants would begin dressing up as women so that they can use the transgender excuse to go into a women's restroom and assault women. That's about as disgusting as the ads they ran. Who ran the Jimmy Horton? It escapes me right now, but it shows you the level that they're willing to stoop. There is no level. There is no amount of mudslinging. They have no moral center, no moral compass. They have nothing except for hatred and bigotry. And you know what? It is working for them. It is working for them, especially in the off years, because progressives sat at home and did not go out and vote. The turnout was extremely low. And anytime there's a low turnout, that plays in favor for conservatives, for Republicans. It's like clockwork. Whenever there's a low turnout, that benefits Republicans, which is why Republicans are vested. They are highly vested in suppressing as many voters as they possibly can. They would be willing to suppress the vote and lose their own votes just to keep the turnout low, because they know whenever there's a low turnout, it benefits the Republican Party. You talk about fascism and authoritarianism. You know, they are willing to disenfranchise millions of Americans simply so that it's easy for them to maintain power. Here's the other bad news, because it goes from worse to worse in this. There's an article from Vox.com. The title of the article is kind of lengthy, but the subtitle is what's important. Democrats really are in big trouble for the foreseeable future. I shared this on my Twitter profile this morning, and I hope I hope you guys got a chance to read it, because the article unpacked all of the reasons progressivism is in trouble in America if we're not careful. For the majority of our lives, we can see a resurgence of conservatism and Republican control and Republican reign because of the persistent and consistent methodology of conservatives, making sure that they are always able to get their voters out in midterm elections, in off-year elections, always making sure that they're able to rally their voters to get out and fight against any progressive referendum or any progressive initiative. They're always able to mobilize their votes and to get people out to vote against their best interests, one, but then two, they're also able to get power. And once they get power, they're able to undermine all of the institutions that traditionally vote along progressive lines. They're able to undermine the Department of Education, which pays teachers, and teachers become part of a union, and anything union generally supports the Democratic Party because of the progressive nature of the Democratic Party. So they undermine educators, they undermine unions, they undermine minorities, they undermine Planned Parenthood, anything and everything they can undermine structurally. Using their governmental power, they do so over a long period of time to ensure that they fundamentally undermine the ability of the Democratic Party to not only win, but to organize on a grassroots level. And they do this consistently and over a long, protracted period of time. They have a strategy in place that they relentlessly play to every time they obtain power. Their goals in Wisconsin, just like across the nation, but most recently in Wisconsin, to undermine the unions. Their goal has always been to undermine women's right to choose, because generally any organization that is a pro-choice organization generally supports the Democratic Party. So if you undermine the organization by making it more difficult, not only it's a twofer, right? You get to fight back against a woman's right to choose, but you also get to undermine the organizations that support the Democratic Party. And so by them doing this strategically over a long period of time, we see what happens is that the grassroots effort, for instance, Acorn, right? One clown was able to take down all of Acorn. Acorn was not an extension of the Democratic Party, but Acorn relentlessly organized in impoverished and minority communities, which traditionally benefited progressive movements, i.e. the Democratic Party. But by undermining Acorn, they undermine all of their voting registration efforts in minority and impoverished communities. And so now they have taken away one of the strongest resources for mobilizing grassroots efforts in predominantly Black, minority, impoverished communities. And by doing that, they've undermined the Democratic Party. So that's just one facet, right? One facet of the article discusses this long strategy of Republicans, the long game. They're playing the long game to undermine, using their legislative power to maintain their legislative power. I mean, if you want to talk about dictatorial tendencies, it comes from the Republican Party. There is no limit to which they will not go, so long as they won't get caught, right? If they get caught, they probably won't do it. But if they could get away with it, I guarantee you they would. That's just one facet. Then the other part of the Vox article, which was a fascinating read, discusses the benefit of low information voters. Now, they called them ignorant voters in the article, but I don't like using the word ignorant because we throw it around as a pejorative. In the real definition of the word ignorant, and don't get me wrong, I think they're ignorant in the pejorative sense also, but in this article, they're speaking from a political science perspective, saying that they're low information voters. Republicans benefit from low information voters because they have this uncanny ability to make everything a wash. And what I mean by that is Republicans have the ability to cause a dysfunction in Washington, D.C. And because of years of propaganda and some bit of truth, the Democratic Party is known as the party of big federal government. And so long as Republicans can cause chaos and dysfunction in the federal government, this benefits the Republican Party. So all Republicans have to do to undermine the Democratic Party, all they have to do to continue to win power is to cause chaos in Washington, D.C. It not only works in Washington, D.C., but the chaos that they cause in Washington, D.C. reverberates down to the state level on state elections. That's why you always see it's always a referendum against. It's always, a vote against big government and the dysfunction of government. But their voters are generally so uninformed that they're not able to discern the root cause of the dysfunction. So Republicans benefit from the ignorance of their voters because their voters are not able to ascertain the fact that the people they are voting for are the very imbeciles that are causing the dysfunction. But what they're able to do, they can't tell who really caused the government to shut down. They just don't like the fact that the government shut down. They don't like the dysfunction. And because the Democratic Party is the big government, federal government party, well, that's generally a vote against the Democratic Party and a vote for the Republican Party. Because of these factors, Vox article, the political scientists that they were quoting suggest that it's very possible for the foreseeable future that Republicans will begin to have a stronger hold on all of the reins of political power in America, which will exacerbate, I think that's the right one, yes, will exacerbate inequality and disenfranchisement and all of the different things that we're fighting against right now. The moral of the story is this: get your ass out there to vote every single time. Sorry, little Davin. I'm sorry you had to hear that, but that's just the truth. People, you have to vote every single time. I know people don't think their vote counts, but when these elections are being won by a margin of 0.5% or 1%, that lets me know that your precinct could have made the difference, and you and a handful of people could have swung your precinct. So you absolutely have to get out there to vote. And the other thing is, we have to continue to pound and fight against the propaganda and begin to spread the correct information instead of the misinformation, so that we can expose people to all of the incessant lies and the techniques and the tactics of conservatism, all to maintain power. And then I don't know if you can even deal with these people, but the people in Kentucky who would rather shoot themselves in the foot, who would rather get rid of their own health care just to spite President Obama, I don't think there's anything you could do with them. The only thing that you could do with them is to out-organize them and outvote them and make sure that you get as many people to the polls as you possibly can. All right, folks, that's what's going on in political news. I'm thinking I should take a break here, but I kind of want to keep going. Yeah, let's keep going. I want to talk about Daniel Holtzclaw. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce it. That's how it's spelled. Daniel Holtzclaw. He is the Oklahoma City, Oklahoma police officer facing 36 counts of rape, sexual battery, and other charges. He's potentially facing a life sentence. He is, I did not see anyone really distinguish that he was a white officer. I think he was a white officer, but I saw a picture of him. Matter of fact, I have a picture of him, but you can't always, you can't always tell just from a photo, but I'll put it up and let you decide for yourself. Okay, so that photo doesn't want to open up. But anyway, here's a story with him. So he's charged with raping 13 Black women. The jury in the trial that has been selected is all white. I believe it's 8 white men, 4 white women. Here's why that's problematic. One, it makes it that much easier for him to get off because of the entire one because of America, right? Let's just make it simple. It's easier because of America, and I'll show you some statistics that back it up, but I want to make it simple first. An all-white jury is more likely to find a police officer or a white person in general not guilty. The statistics back that up. A study from Duke University. I shared that link earlier today, and I'll share the infographic shortly. That's number one. Two, it makes it easier for the prosecution, for the defense attorneys rather, to play into the dehumanization and the victim blaming that they do in almost every rape case, right? Now, they would do this to white women just like they would do it to Black women. But there is a disconnect because of the inability of people to identify with people of other races, particularly white people, to identify with Black people, to see the same humanity in them. It's going to be that much easier for the defense to put those 13 women on trial. And last but not least, it's just a statistical fact in America. Let's see if I can get this one open up. Nope, that doesn't want to open up either, but I'll pull it up from my Twitter account. It is that much easier for juries, all white juries, to find white people in America guilty. 16% more likely to find African Americans guilty when it's an all white jury versus finding white people guilty. You guys have to bear with me that I'm using a new system to pull up my media files, and it's not working exactly the way I want it to. But I definitely want you to see this image. And those of you listening via radio, I will speak about it and let you hear it for yourself. But here it is. Researchers examined 700 felony trials. And let me get the screen share going for you. 700 trials. And in those 700 trials, they found that when it is an all-white jury, they are about 15 to 16% more likely to find a Black person guilty than they are a white person guilty. When you have one person of color on the jury, that disparity comes into parity. And you find that they find black people and white people guilty. They're convicted at about the same rate, about a 2% difference within the margin of error. I want to slow down because I didn't say that as eloquently as it needs to be stated. When you have an all-white jury, black people are more likely to be convicted by 15%. 15% more likely to be convicted when there's an all-white jury. Disproportionately, let's just use that. They are disproportionately convicted when there's an all-white jury. But when you put one black person or one person of color on a jury, then they find it in parity, where white people are convicted at about the same rate as black people are convicted. The bottom line of this entire infographic, and you can find it on my Twitter profile at the BPD show. The bottom line of that entire infographic is that our criminal justice system is not colorblind. Our justice system is not blind. And in this Daniel Holtzclaw, whatever his last name is, however you pronounce the case, he has an all-white jury, which gives him a better chance to get away with alleged rape. Now, I want you to juxtapose that to the story out of Kentucky, another story out of Kentucky. This time is dealing with Judge Olu Stevens. I did a video on him. Judge Olu Stevens is the African-American judge who was infamous, if you would, several months back regarding the witness statement that he was offended by. Just Google Olu Stevens and you'll find it. He's back in the news because he dismissed a jury, and I believe he dismissed either the entire jury panel or the jury that came out of it's one or the other, but he essentially dismissed the jury because it was an all-white jury in a case for a black man, and I believe it was a drug-related case. Now, I didn't see him quote this, but anyone looking at this data coming from Duke University could see that when it's a black defendant on trial and there's an all-white jury, he's more likely to be convicted than if he was a white person. There is a problem in our criminal justice system, and we have it perfectly demonstrated side by side. You have the case with the Daniel Holtzclaw, where he's a white police officer. He gets a white jury. Therefore, according to this data, he is more likely to get off for raping 13 black women. And now you have the case also in Kentucky with Judge Olu Stevens having to repeatedly dismiss because at the end of each round of jury selection, they always came up with, well, actually, no, let me correct myself. The entire jury panel, their entire selection pool was not representative of the community. And we're not saying, this data is not saying that you have to have an all black jury to get justice. They're saying just have one. Whatever percentage 1 out of 12 is, which, that's got to be representative of most major cities across the country. There's at least 1 out of 12 people as an African-American. But that's our justice system. That's what it looks like. And this is what this is amazing. I never knew this data until today. I pulled it up at just a real simple search, and I found that there has been that research, and they have concluded that a one person of color brings more justice, more parity in justice. And here's the thing that bothers me the most about this. It's that all of these things that are baked into our system, all of these things that are gross miscarriages of justice. You already have this perception of criminality that causes the police to racially profile in the beginning, right? So it starts at the very beginning, man, and then you already have that same perception of criminality that white jurors are likely to view blackness because it's just baked into the system. I'm not saying that you can't get a fair trial, but I'm saying you have to work harder to get a fair trial. And so in the midst of all of these things that are baked into the system, at the end of the day, when they find Daniel Holtzclaw not guilty, they're going to claim that justice was served. And that's the part that drives me back crazy, because it's not justice. It is a miscarriage of justice. And the nerve of them to categorize it as justice is the insult to injury. All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want you to join the conversation. 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back after this. What's going on, everyone? This is Benjamin Dixon, and I wanted to take a minute to tell you how you can support the Benjamin Dixon Show. One thing I've learned over the last few months is that it is impossible for us to do this without you. Every time you click on a link, every time you read an article, every time you share a podcast or share a YouTube video, you are absolutely supporting our show. And without you, it's simply impossible. But there's another way you can support us. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com and register for our blog. You will be directly contributing to the success of the Benjamin Dixon Show by registering for our blog. You will help us increase our audience and increase our reach. Remember, every click counts, every subscribe counts, and every share counts. So go over to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com, click on the Contact Us tab, and register for our blog today. There is a radical, violent revolution taking place in America right now, figuratively speaking, where we are ripping from the status quo the very notion that they have the right to define the status quo. We are ripping it from them. We are telling them that they no longer get to decide what America is going to look like. And that is terrifying for a lot of people. That is downright terrifying when someone comes into your home only to help you to understand that your home is not yours in isolation, that we share this home equally, and that we have the right to be comfortable in this home just as much right as you have to be comfortable, so that a white Christian straight man, the comfort that he feels in America will be experienced by the gay Black woman and every other intersection that has been erased. That, my friends, that is a revolution if I have ever seen one. That is something, that is the next stage of evolution in America.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Ben Dixon.
He's obviously he's a radio show host or something like that.
You're damn right I am.
Hey, no,
All right.
no.
Welcome back, folks. All right, let's do something here. I want to switch this up. I wanted to read a couple of comments that are coming from our comment section. Not our comment section, but our live chat. You could join the live chat over on YouTube. The link is just go to the Benjamin Dixon Show and get over to YouTube. All right. Progressivism is in crisis. Quantum Samurai says that's very true. I like what Todd said here. Is Kentucky's a slippery state to begin with. Todd, I have to agree with you 100%. Here's the thing about Kentucky. First of all, people like Kim Davis are considered Democrats in Kentucky. Or actually not considered, but are actually registered Democrats. At least she was. So Kentucky is an extremely conservative state in the first place, and it's conservative with blue dog Democrats. It's conservative with evangelical Democrats, right? So they're not really progressive to begin with. And sometimes it may be better to have a red state with a red governor instead of us having a blue state that we think is blue, but they pass red type conservative legislation. Kentucky will replace the ACA with the Bible sharing program. That's from Todd. I think you're about right on that one. Thank you. I said Billy Horton. It was Bush who ran Willie Horton ads against Michael Dukakis. Thank you, Michael Solomon. I appreciate that. Michael, I'm gonna have to get that Hillary Clinton article on tomorrow. Quantum Samurai also stated that that's what they are doing here in Louisiana. No policies being proposed. Just say the other candidate supported Obama on something, and that's how the guy who ousted Mary Landrieu won. You know what? I was following Louisiana and I saw that, and the amazing thing is, you're absolutely right. They do not ever have to propose a sound bit of policy. And when I say a bit, I mean a piece. They don't even have to give you a piece of policy. All they have to do is say they oppose President Obama, and they're able to win. Right. Thank you, Justin, for doing that search for me, or already knowing it. Daniel Holtzclaw is Japanese and Caucasian. And not only parity, but convictions of white goes up while convictions of black comes down. I guess you cannot plead affluenza with a diverse jury. Right. Thank you. Right. So it doesn't only bring in parity, but that's the thing. That's it. You know what? And I guess you have to take a minute. Thank you for bringing that out. You have to take a minute and consider the real ramifications of that, right? It's not just bringing convictions into parity. We're talking about when you add a person of color to a jury. That means that there are some cases where white people are getting off when they shouldn't, and black people are going to jail when they shouldn't, when they otherwise wouldn't. Right? We don't, let's set aside the actual true innocence of someone. We're talking about the processes of our judicial system, of our justice system, rather. And if you actually have a representative jury, or at least one person of color on a jury, then there are some white people who have gotten off that would not have gotten off. And there's some black people who are in jail right now who would not be in jail. That is a very good distinction. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. And this is from Jonathan Rubin. He said, I'm a white guy, but I fully support Black Lives Matter. If Hillary and politicians like her ilk can't deal with some of the protests, then they are not fit to be commander in chief. Well, it's like President Obama said, if the Republicans can't handle CNBC moderators, then how the hell are they going to handle Putin or whoever is the next premier, the minister in China, prime minister in China? All right, folks, let's bust a move to the next segment. I want to talk about Fox, not Fox. What is the name of that city? Oh goodness, so many things on my mind. I want to talk about the officer who everyone thought was killed by 3 people, 2 white guys and a black guy, allegedly, and it turns out that he actually killed himself. Let me pull that up. So the hero, he had a full burial with honors. His wife received donations from a fallen hero account. Glinovich, turns out that he killed himself after being involved with years of embezzlement and stealing from a local charity. Several things about this case. Once, prior to him killing himself, he radioed in that he was in pursuit of 3 men, 2 white, 1 black. And then shortly after that, he killed himself. There was some, I haven't read an article that makes it definitively clear how the coroner determined it was a suicide, but the police chief, the investigators, and the coroner have all confidently stated that it was a suicide. And from the beginning, though, I did read this part, that they could not exclude suicide. They did not have enough evidence to definitively say it was a homicide. And so eventually, and today it was released that it was a suicide. So look at all the things that happened, right? So there was a statewide manhunt for these killers. There were articles being written all across the country defaming Black Lives Matter, because somehow when 3 people are involved in the killing, 2 are allegedly involved in the killing, 2 of them are white, 1 of them is black, somehow it's the fault of Black Lives Matter. Right. So you had people like Alex Jones from InfoWars. He put out an article, or one of his minions put out an article, and it read that this is a quote directly from the article: "Is the murder of the Illinois police officer another violent result of the Black Lives Matter movement, which promotes the killing of cops and encourages more racial division across the country?" right? Don't you love those statements that just kind of, forward a premise without even the possibility that their faulty premise is wrong, right? It's beautiful rhetoric, right? But they immediately went into a tirade across the country because if one black person was involved with anything negative with regard to the police, then obviously they must be working for President Obama, which you saw all kinds of people saying this, and then they must be working with Black Lives Matter, because never mind, the two white people could have been with the Klan for that matter. Never mind that, there was a black person involved, so it had to be Black Lives Matter. Turns out this officer had been embezzling money for years. He was about to get found out. He deleted text prior to killing himself, but investigators were able to recover the text, which showed an extensive conversation about his fear of getting caught, and if he got caught, that he's essentially effed. And so that evidence, along with the coroner's evidence, they concluded that it was a suicide. Did anyone go back to retract their statements? No. Matter of fact, I'm going to post this link right here in the chat room. You guys can go look for yourself. This link is up and live. InfoWars has not retracted their article. There are dozens upon dozens of tweets from conservative thought leaders who and then just conservative shills on Twitter, not only blaming Black Lives Matter, but also blaming President Obama. There it is in the chat room there. So there's really nothing deep to dig into here, other than the fact that this brilliantly exposes their willingness to politicize a tragedy without any information, without any evidence, other than the fact that it was a black person. Now, please tell me who is racializing shit in America. Please tell me who is jumping to conclusions and attempting to start a race war in America, because they had no evidence whatsoever. There was no reason to even mention Black Lives Matter. Only 1/3 of the alleged assailants was black. Only 1/3. But because there was a black face involved, it had to be those racist Black Lives Matter people. You know, when Black Lives Matter gets involved, all of a sudden, race baiters. Who's doing the race baiting? Alex Jones. Who's doing the race baiting? Fox News, Sheriff Clark. I almost called him the coon of the year. Somebody else already called him that, so I don't need to even call him that again. Who's doing the race baiting? Because at a moment of what we thought was a national tragedy, at a moment of fear because there are 3 people out there who were so brazen that they would kill a police officer, instead of gathering any information, Fox News, Breitbart, Drudge Report, Alex Jones and InfoWars, all of the conservative shills, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, all of them immediately jumped to blame Black America. But Al Sharpton is the race baiter, right? Jesse Jackson is the race baiter. This is the part of the system that would make me mad if I wasn't so keenly aware of what they're doing. It is their ability to make a position out of, a rock solid position out of, I know you are, but what am I? That is the totality of conservatism. I know you are, but what am I? What am I? You know, they're guilty of totalitarianism. I know you are, but what am I? They are guilty of race baiting. I know you are, but what am I? They're guilty of politicizing tragedies. They are masters of projection, of blaming other people for the exact thing that they are guilty of. So Alex Jones on YouTube. You have all those subscribers. You need to get on the air and you need to apologize for race baiting. You need to apologize for politicizing a tragedy. You need to apologize for being exactly the things that you claim Black Lives Matter is. Starting a race war, starting and fueling the flames of racial animus in America. And once you're done, you need to tell all of your conservative Republican shield buddies to do the same damn thing. That's all I got to say about that. Moving on. All right. There's another story that I'm going to try to avoid. I'm going to do my best to not talk about this one, but I guess because I mentioned it, I have to. I want to talk about the 9-year-old boy, and I wanted to wait to the end on this, but this might just mark the end. Actually, this is the wrong one. Yeah. Okay. Let me talk about this one first. This is horrible, right? There's news, sad news, and more sad news. There's a 9-year-old boy shot dead in Marksville City in Louisiana. And he was in a car with his father, both Caucasian, and they were fleeing the police. The police officer said that the car attempted to hit him. And so he opened fire, shooting the 6-year-old boy in the head, killing him and critically wounding the father. Now, we don't know for sure that the police officer even knew that there was a child in the car. But now a 6-year-old boy is dead. And I'm going to pull his picture up on the screen because I want you to see who this police officer killed. Over what? I don't know. I don't know what it was over. I guess I could read a little further and find out what it was over. They were trying to serve a warrant. There's a little boy. I just want you to look at the picture. They have released his name, but I don't want to say his name. But this happened in Marksville, Louisiana. Our police, I've said it so many times, and I don't want to. I mean, what do you even say about this? When you have the freedom and you've been authorized and deputized to use lethal force, I think that it's worthwhile not being trigger happy, to say the least. I think that it's worthwhile when you have the ability to take a human life underneath the authorization of the state, that you have the responsibility to your authority, to protect your authority, to protect the state, to protect yourself, to protect the people that you have been charged and deputized to serve. To not be so eager and quick to pull a gun. Now, depending on the evidence that comes out, because I think this case is pretty new. I think it's they're investigating as of today. My suspicion, just off of what we've seen so many times, my suspicion is that this father was not trying to drive down a police officer with his son in the car. I could turn out to be wrong tomorrow. If I do, I'll take everything I'm getting ready to say back. But until then, I don't believe that any father, no matter how criminal they are, is going to try to run down a police officer with their child in the car. More likely, he's like that 16-year-old boy, I believe, in South Carolina, who was trying to get away on a marijuana charge and end up getting killed because he got too close to a police officer. More than likely, that's what happened. And now you have somebody's son dead. Our police culture as a whole must change. A wholesale change of our policing culture in the United States across the board from top to bottom. Police officers need to be retrained, not to escalate so quickly from 0 to 100, from this guy is trying to get away to let me shoot this guy. There's so many examples of this where police officers are now killing people who are retreating. In some states, I believe it's within the state law that they can actually get away with that if they feel and they can express that they were fearful of their life, and another officer or reasonable officer would have done the same. So people are getting off with this, and it's very likely that this officer will get away with killing this boy. I'm not going to play the cheap political game asking where all of the white people are who would say, you know, it's the father's fault. You know, I haven't seen them, but it's not about that. It could be about that. I could play that very cheap political game. Like we're all the white people. We're the all lives matter crowd now, right? I will say this, that this is why Black Lives Matter fights so hard. They don't get it right all the time. They don't. But this is why they fight so hard, because it happens to all of us. It disproportionately happens in the Black community. And so if you feel any twinge of sorrow over this young, bright-eyed little boy wearing his cap getting gunned down in his father's passenger seat, then you should be able to understand why Black Lives Matter is so passionate about bringing a complete change to the criminal justice system and how police us. Is it that difficult? Is it that hard to understand that once we fix it, or once we start addressing it in the Black community, it's going to positively affect every community? And so just by default of Black people carrying change on their shoulders, it's going to positively affect everyone. So by necessity, at its essence, Black Lives Matter is all lives matter. It is inclusive. All right. So then there's another article. I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't have put these at the end of the show, but Tyshawn Lee, I hope I pronounced that correctly, 9-year-old out of Chicago, gunned down, and officials are not able to rule out the possibility that he was targeted. Let me start here. I don't talk about Black on Black crime on my show. Let me tell you why. Number one, I don't talk about it because it is so incessantly used as a political tool to silence voices that are fighting against a system that, to be redundant, systematically kills us, disproportionately kills us, that has oppressed us and continues to oppress us in many ways. And so anytime people speak out against the systemic problems in America, they always want to throw a Black on Black crime. And I don't talk about it because I will not give voice to that narrative of distraction and deflection, because there is clearly a difference between state-sanctioned murder, state-sanctioned abuse, and state-sanctioned killings, and killings of people who are involved in drug violence or a love affair and killed for other reasons, right? So there is a difference, and I won't allow that distraction to be forwarded on my show. So that's one of the reasons I don't talk about it on my show. The second reason I won't talk about it on my show is because it's disingenuous at best. The Black on Black crime narrative is disingenuous because white on white crime is just as epidemic. It is an epidemic. People, if they're going to kill somebody, they're going to kill somebody they know. So the fact that Black on Black crime is so high and white on white crime is so high is merely a reflection on how segregated our society really is. So that's another reason I don't talk about it. The third reason I don't talk about it on my show is because I never want those people who would manipulate and deflect and use these types of things to silence the legitimate qualms that African Americans have with this system, I never want them to say amen to anything I ever say. I don't want their support. So what I'm getting ready to say, I don't want it. If you are a right-wing conservative that does not believe that police target black people, that there's racial profiling, and you don't believe that police abuse the black community, if you don't believe that there's such thing as police violence against black people, dislike my video. I don't want your support. I never want you to say amen to anything that I say. I don't want your dimes. I don't want your pennies from the view. Cut off right now. The final reason I don't talk about black on black crime on my show is the real reason out of all of them. The only people I don't hate white supremacists. I don't despise conservatives. I disagree with conservatives. And I think white supremacists need to be dealt with and fixed. The problems need to be fixed. But there's really one group of people that I really despise. And that is black people who so quickly and easily destroy our own community. And it's something about seeing black people do to us the very thing that we are fighting against. Something about that brings the very worst out of me. This case out of Chicago, a 9-year-old boy shot dead, most likely due to gang violence on the south side of Chicago. $17,000 reward is being offered, leading to an arrest. 9-year-old boy. And if you look at his picture, man, yeah, let me let you look at his picture and you'll see why it's impossible not to be angry. Grandmother found him dead in the alley in his own blood, in a pool of his own blood. Tyshawn Lee. Black on black violence. This is what I want. This is what I want. I never want to be associated with anything supporting a person who would destroy our community. Ever. Ever. Not only the black community, but our human community. Ever. So what I want in this particular case, this is what I want. I hope that they find this guy or these people, whoever's associated with, and I hope they take you into custody without incident. Because I don't want this to be a case of police brutality. I want them to treat you with more respect than they treated Dylan Roof, because I want them to take you in, because I don't want anyone to rally for you. I don't want anyone to protest for you. I don't want anyone to think that there's systemic problems in your case, because you don't deserve that. You don't deserve our support. You don't deserve our love. You don't deserve our blackness. You don't deserve any of that. So I want them to take you into custody without incident. And then I want you to get a jury of your peers. Hell, let it be an all-black jury. I want you to have the best attorney, defense attorney. I hope somebody raises some money for you, not on a GoFundMe account, because we will shut that shit down. I want them to raise money for you and get you the best defense attorney, because I don't want there to be the possibility of an appeal. I want you to have a black judge. I want you to have the quintessential example of justice in America. I want you to have the perfect example of justice. And once that's done, no one can file an appeal. No one can cry a miscarriage of justice. No one can say anything. I want them to find you guilty, and I don't want them to give you the death penalty, because that's something I fight against. And I don't want to ever be on the side of a person who would do this to ourselves. So I don't want them to give you the death penalty, because I fight against that. A lot of us fight against that. I want them to give you life in jail, life in prison. And I want you to be in prison so long that your mother forgets that you are alive, that she wakes up one day and thinks, is Pookie still alive? Oh, he's been in jail. I want you to be in jail so long that you forget what it's like to have human interaction. And I want them to treat you well in jail. I don't want them to rape you in jail because that's something we fight against. And you don't deserve our support on anything, on any day, on any issue. Not one tear should be shed for you. So I want them to treat you well in jail. I want you to grow old in jail, and I want you to die in jail. And I want it to all be done properly so that no one can cry foul, so that no one can say that there was a miscarriage of justice, so that no one can say, free my nigga Pookie, because you are not my nigga. You are not my friend. You are not my brother. Only thing you have in common with me is a complexion. And I feel this way about every son of a bitch that would kill another human being, especially why so many of us are out here fighting against it. And you savages, yes, I said you savages are out there undermining all of our work. You don't deserve Black Lives Matter. You don't deserve anything but the very best that this criminal justice system has to offer.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
And we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.